Hello. Welcome to is it Thursday? Our Thursday night awake meeting, Masters and Mentors. Um, this has been put on by awake.net, and awake.net are an ad-free social impact network for the entheogenic community. And our mission is to end addiction one Ibogaine treatment at a time, and that we are building a global village of healers on Awake, and we invite Ibogaine providers, integration coaches, and aftercare retreats to add their profile as we will be continuing to host these weekly deep dives into entheogens, particularly Iboga and Ibogaine, which kind of lately have become the forefront of a US executive order. Uh, just to add something, please, no self promotion and no selling of drugs on this forum. This is really an educational forum. And yeah, um, I think we can start. I think tonight, if I get me, if I'm right, what's the story, Lakshmi, for us tonight? Quickly.
Well, so the topic is on finding purpose,
Yeah,
and yeah, uh, stories about how Ibogaine has helped people do that.
yeah. I think I'll kick this off with my kind of origin story and where I am now, and what a wonderful life I am kind of living now. Um, 15 years ago, I'm on a floor in a flat in Notting Hill in London, and I hardly recognize myself. The pain of childhood conditioning and expectation and not succeeding in life and failing at every rehab and every detox and everything that I touched. As my sister said, I had the Schmidas touch. Um, and I found myself at a place at around about 43, 44 years of age where I was too frightened to kill myself because I was frightened of eternal damnation, but I really wasn't enjoying life. And the only relief I could get from this horrendous pain that I was in was to continue smoking crack and taking coke. And I was on a merry-go-round of self-destruction. And if anybody asks me if I know what hell is, I've been through a lot of things in my life, and I think the last few months of my using, you know, I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy, to be honest. Um, and then somehow Ibogaine came into my life, and I was desperate. I'd gone through multiple rehabs, multiple detoxes, done geographicals, um, changed jobs, changed relationships. I got myself into all. The only thing I managed to avoid somehow was prison, and I just don't know how I managed that. I think that's perhaps I had an angel on my side over my shoulder protecting me, but I never got into trouble with the law, though I really deserved to. Um, and I went off and I did this strange West African root bark called Ibogaine with an amazing provider called Paul Featherstone. And about 6 months later, with lots and lots of encouragement from Paul, I started working in this game. And I don't think that's really where my purpose and meaning is fully. I think what happened was Ibogaine allowed me to turn up for myself, to see myself, to actually parent myself. And it was a slow and painful process, and I made mistakes and I fell over on the way, but I kept picking myself up. And I pretty much turned up for myself on a daily basis. And I sat in my shit, um, kind of, sat down, and I was very curious about where the pain was coming from and why I might be thinking like that. And slowly but surely, I started to feel better. I started to connect with my body again. I started to trust my thinking. Um, and in the meantime, I'd met a load of amazing people within the ibogaine world who were available to me, and they would support me, and they started to give me meaning, and they started to give me purpose. I think, turning up for myself on a daily basis post Ibogaine and turning up for myself pre Ibogaine was where it started to change. Purpose and meaning. I'm a father of two beautiful children. I've been with my partner for 18 years. I was able to sit by my father's bedside and hold his hand as he died in December. I've taken countless friends through Ibogaine provision. I've made countless friends through being involved within the Ibogaine world. I've been gifted an extraordinary life where I am working with a compound which has such a high efficacy rate that really it's more about joy than the pain when you work in the Ibogaine world. And that's something pretty amazing. And I'm looking out of the window at the moment and I'm looking at the clouds there and I'm looking at a little swallow just flying by and I'm looking at the light blue going to a darker blue where I look up. I'm just fucking available for life. I mean, that's the reality. And for 45 years, I wasn't available for life because I was frightened and I had been conditioned into thinking that I'm not good enough. And I kept going to the dressing up box and playing roles in order to try and define who I was. And having done Ibogaine and the purpose and meaning I found after Ibogaine is, and I think it comes down to this, Ibogaine allowed me to become the person I was supposed to be before the world got its hands on me. And I'll tell you something else as well. The drugs were no more than a taxi that brought me to a place where I could do this work on myself. And that's been the privilege of a lifetime. I was talking to one of my friends in the Ibogaine world the other day, and we were talking about reincarnation and how many times somebody comes back and whether they have to fulfill a kind of sacred contract in order to move on without reincarnating. Not that I say I won't, but I think if this is a lifetime, if I've lived many, many, many lifetimes, this may be the first one that has purpose and meaning for me. This may be the first one where I get what it's really about. And what it's about is embracing the whole shebang, being available for it in every way. The privilege of being alive on this spinning blue planet, this marble hurtling through the universe, and to be a conscious collection of atoms and protons that has somehow taken conscious form for 60, 70, 80 years. And just to be amazed by that and to be in the headspace where I can appreciate that because I was never in the headspace beforehand. That is where purpose and meaning come from. I think also the other thing I'd like to add, because I always add this Guy Bergs talks about, you know, if you can have a mindful life, you're going to do a great job. If you can have a mindful life with integrity and kindness, you can have an extraordinary life. And the deal is we're not here to impress anybody with how clever or inventive we are. We're actually down here to notice what we've already got. And I've got beautiful children. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got a home. I've got a car that goes from A to B. I'm going on holiday next week. I work with so many amazing people. I've had so many amazing clients come through my life. Actually, I think this lifetime has been a privilege and I've really enjoyed it. Um, but my God, I had to work bloody hard to get to where I am now and had to go through an awful lot of pain and an awful lot of discomfort. But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the trick. Maybe we have to learn to love even in the darkest of places. Um, And so I suppose, yeah, when we talk about meaning and purpose, I think for me, it's just appreciate being alive, just appreciate being down here. I just appreciate all the silliness and the madness of the world we live in. We could get angry and we could get upset about it, or we can choose to say, well, wow, what an extraordinary time I'm living in. What a privilege it is to be here in this tumultuous, difficult world where there's so much going on. Um, that's the privilege. So I think that's my story. That's where meaning and purpose comes from for me. Um, and I would really, really love to put my great friend Asha Caravelli on the spot now and ask her perhaps where meaning and purpose comes from. Is she there? Or should we go somewhere else? I mean, Lakshmi, do you want to talk about your journey? You're a loudspeaker.
To do it in the second half of this hour, if you don't mind. Okay. Where's Asha? Where is she? I think she there she
Can you see me or hear me?
yeah, here you go.
Okay. Oh God. Um, I'm only looking at myself, of course. So
Oh,
how
really?
ironic.
Well, that's because you're the spotlight. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I wish I could. Maybe I just stop video on myself, and then it makes it easier to talk. So first of all, it's
No,
Anders. Thank.
if you do that, then we can't see you. So you have to make your video.
I tried. I tried to hide. So, Anders, thank you. It's always really a privilege to get to hear your story and to just the idea that we all have an origin story. That is that. That's part of what Iboga showed me. I know people talk about what they got from it, but part of what it has always done with me is just take me back, take a chair and disassemble it back to the seed in the forest and the
Give me
first.
some milk and drink some cookies.
So I can't hear anyone. I'm not sure my phone is working well today. I can see that your mouth is moving, Lakshmi, but I can't hear you.
Muted. We can hear you
Thank,
perfectly.
okay, thank you.
I can't see you
So
though. Lakshmi, are you spotlighted instead of Asha?
I
No,
can see myself and Lakshmi.
Asha is the spotlight. Yeah.
Anyways, to save time, I'll just start. So
Yeah.
it is 2026 now. In 2003, my ex-husband, we had already been married, had 2 children, and divorced because of his chemical dependency, his addiction. Um, and then another, I don't know, decade of his using had gone on. And in 2003, he said to me, he looked like he was dying. He said, I'm going to go to Mexico and I'm going to take Ibogaine to cure my addiction. And I said, well, you're crazy. That's absolutely insane. It was a new level of insane I had never considered before. You're going where to do what? I had never, who had heard of it at that point? So I kind of put my hand up to the whole thing. Like, I don't know if I can support this. I don't. And it didn't matter. He and his girlfriend had made this decision that they were going to Mexico to take Ibogaine, and they were each addicted to methadone, heroin, and methamphetamine. They had this daily cycle of doing a hit of methamphetamine to get enough energy to get to the methadone clinic, to get well enough to get the heroin. And it was just over and over and over again, listening to Anders talk over and over and over again. This was hopeless existence. Anyways, it took them a while to save up the money for their treatment. They went to the then Ibogaine Association run by Dr. Martin Polanco. And Randy Hankin, Rocky and I were just talking about the role that Randy Hankin had in that. Each Randy and Dr. Martin played a significant role in that experience for Rocky. Anyways, he went through the treatment in 2003. And I mean, from my perspective, he would have to tell his story, but my perspective was that I didn't talk to him the day of his treatment, the day after, but I did talk to him on the second day after his treatment. We had this phone call that was super significant for me because all I can say is I heard him back in his body, and it was really clear. And I remember saying, "Welcome back, Rock. Like, you've been gone for a long time." And he, over several days, asked for some really unexpected things. "Can I have our children, please? Can I bring our kids down here? I want to stay and learn how to do this." And I was like, "Okay, so now you want me to give you our children in Tijuana, Mexico, just days after you're dying of addiction." And somehow we did involve a counselor, but through a series of meetings with a counselor, we decided to let that happen. And our children we're still a divorced couple, but our children were like 12 and 13 years old, and they went to live with their dad, who sort of developed this role of like the person who takes care of you when you come back from your Ibogaine treatment. And he stayed in Mexico for a year, our kids for half of that time, half a year. And I don't know, like the story could go on forever. I mean, the story, there's so many details to it, but long and short of it is eventually he left Mexico. The kids came back with me. He had a second treatment with Ibogaine about 8 months after his first one. He had a third treatment with Ibogaine about 8 months after that. And then he went to Mexico and opened the Dream House. I didn't know behind the scenes he's developing relationships with Richie, with Claire, with other, the early mycelia of the Ibogaine community was being developed. But he goes to Mexico and the Dream House is going on. I went down there. I took the kids down there for a month to visit their dad, and he gave me Ibogaine for the first time at the end of that trip. And, there's so much about my own personal experience, but I do remember very clearly in the morning saying to him, "This is big, Rocky, this is really big." And not knowing what that big would look like, but realizing now after, I don't know, that was 2007. So, coming up on 20 years, I knew then there was something about this medicine. So a couple more years go by and he invites me down to work at the Dream House. That was 2009, ironically, the same year and time of year that Jonathan Dickinson arrived in San Pancho. So did I. Jonathan went with Claire and I went with Rocky to the Dream House and started working and have not stopped. I really haven't stopped since. So the meaning and purpose is, boy, if I don't squeeze it, I'm definitely, I understand what the purpose asks of me. And I understand that that's a dedication to a level of self-care that allows me to show up again and again and again and again for long hours and hold space for a process that no matter where you go or how you do it, it asks for time. So I understand that relationship. I'm one of those people who I'm willing to give up, my relationship with time and what I want to do when I want to do it and just be here and let this happen. And, I trust the Ibogaine. I've seen it go through its cycle so many times now. I've seen people go up and go down and need that, you know? I don't know. It's not, I don't make the rules with the Iboga, but it does consistently seem as if what happens is what needs to happen. It's necessary. And it's, you know, like Anders, like Paul Featherstone, like so many of us, we just hold that space. This needs to happen. So can't be rushed. Corners can't be cut. Not this time, not any time. All the time. You check cross all the T's, you dot all the I's, because once the Iboga is given, once the Ibogaine is given, that's not when you want to be like, oh, shoot, did we think of that? Like, no. You think of all of it beforehand so that when it begins, that you can just let happen what needs to happen. So I don't know, that seems as if it's more Iboga's purpose, and that feels more important than my purpose, oftentimes.
Is there a real difference between Iboga's purpose and your purpose in a kind of fundamental way? Because you know, the Iboga has inspired you to work with it because it did something for you and you can then share. And so I guess that's my question. Is there a difference, you know, or is it just like a harmony of purpose? Because Iboga seems to, Ibogaine, not just Iboga and Ibogaine, they seem to ground you in the world in a certain way, in your purpose. I've seen that for myself. I've seen that for everybody else. So I guess, can you just talk about that a little bit?
I mean, I say things to people, just keep your eyes open, keep your heart open, that you might get homework. You might be given some type of a task or a sense that something needs to be completed. You know, you need to do something. Certainly the instruction is never do nothing after this. It's always, you know, get into your process, work with what comes, or sit with it if that's what is being asked also. Sorry for the background noise. That's a lot of talking for me. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? I don't know if I can generate any more than that right now.
I think you know, the thing what struck me when you said, you know, welcome back, Rocky. And that's what I keep seeing again and again and again with clients. You know, they get so lost and they get so involved with themselves and they get so stuck in a certain way of thinking and self-sabotaging, and they're really not in touch with their soul and their actualizing tendency. Um, and you know, I tend to always look at, you know, Ibogaine allows you to become the person you were supposed to be before the world got its hands on you. And like Carl Rogers, I believe human beings are fundamentally decent and kind and loving. And I suppose when, you know, somebody like me who's been down in chronic addiction and has been such a bad actor at times and played such bad roles and done such kind of awful things, um, the redemption that you can get from Ibogaine and coming back and actually liking yourself again is one of the most beautiful things. And I kind of agree with with Asher completely. That was the way it was meant to be, and we're continually tested. And the path that we kind of went down is almost preordained in order to put obstacles in our way in order for us to grow and to become and to mature and to, you know, from a transpersonal perspective is to go from like that tunnel vision into something far more expansive. um it is such extraordinary medicine. It really is. It can take people who are completely lost. It can give them another chance. What we're seeing, what it can do with veterans now coming back from war and you know, have complex post-traumatic injuries. Um, how it's helping them and how people are redefining their lives. And also, what I love about Ibogaine is that it encourages healthy rebellion. It really does. It encourages you to question authority, institutions, um, the spiritual life that has been fostered upon you, the capitalist kind of reasonings that have been fostered upon people. Um, Suddenly you find people who really start to care about others and really start to care about maybe the environment or helping others. There's not a medicine that can turn people around like this, allow people to get in touch with who they really are. Um, it's angelic in that way, but you know, it needs to push you and it needs to make it difficult for you, because if it's not difficult and it's not hard, then where does the purpose and meaning come from? Um, and I think that's something really, really important to talk about in this new paradigm of Ibogaine provision. It's not a quick fix. Ibogaine does 20% of the work and asks you to do the other 80% of the work. And it's how you show up on a daily basis and not just turn up for yourself, but turn up for the people around you and the people that you love, and how you can be contributing to life in general in a really positive way. And for people who've been on the take and on the quick fix and whatever, maybe we are the people who are supposed to be working with Ibogaine. Maybe the people who have hurt the most and seen the worst and hurt themselves the most are the very, very, very people who get drawn to working with this medicine because, well, bloody hell, if it can turn me around, it can turn somebody else round, and let's give them their opportunity. And that's why, I love people like Asher and Rocky and Paul Featherstone and Lakshmi and a whole Gareth and a whole load of people who work in the ibosphere. They've all got hard, tough stories to tell. And somehow we've all ended up doing something that is worthwhile. Wow, what a privilege. And I'm not so concerned about what car I'm driving now. I'm not so concerned about what area I'm living in. I'm not so concerned what my neighbors think about me. I'm more concerned about how my children are being taught. I'm more concerned about how we're being taxed. I'm more concerned about the wars we're fighting. I'm more concerned about, so I have a wider kind of lens these days as a result of Ibogaine. 15 years ago, my only concern was, fuck, how do I get enough money together to get some crack? It's a very different world. So I think by default, if you put respect and reverence and intentionality and curiosity into the process of taking Ibogaine, the rewards are fantastic. The rewards of connection, of consciousness, of mindfulness. But by the same token, if you don't put the work into meeting Ibogaine, it can really kick your ass as well. And when it kicks your ass, it's basically saying to you, this is who you are. Look at yourself. And a lot of people don't like what they see.
Yeah.
And so they moan and complain about the Ibogaine or the Ibogaine provision or whatever. But the reality is that Ibogaine, it likes to be met with some respect and reverence and some intentionality and some tenacity. And above all, Ibogaine likes to be met with curiosity. I'm just trying to see, Lakshmi, if there's anybody in the audience who I can just kind of pin onto. Or do you want to pick somebody, Lakshmi?
ask somebody. Does somebody want to share their story at this point? I think Shane just said he has to drop out and he's coming back. But anyone? Palin?
Yeah, I could tell my story.
Awesome. Let me just spotlight you. One sec. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, I first was introduced to Ibogaine. It was really interesting. The the week I discovered that opiates were my thing when I was 13 years old, I found I was walking on in San Francisco on Haight Street, and there was an article by Claire Wilkins about somebody who went down to Mexico, who did Ibogaine and got off of heroin. And I knew it was gonna I just had a feeling in my heart that one day I was going to do this. And from that point on, I continued with an acute opiate addiction for 13 years. And 2020, after going to rehab and trying many, many, many different modalities and many different things, I had a relapse. And my ex at the time he worked at an Ibogaine treatment center, and he asked me if I wanted to do it. And I had been off of Suboxone long enough to go to treatment. And at that point, though, I didn't see a way out, and I completely put Ibogaine to the back of my mind. And my what I thought my choices were at the time was kill myself or become a prostitute, either continue or stop. And Ibogaine came in, and it was the most grueling and most fun thing I had ever done. And yeah, that was it for me. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't have little slips. But it was nothing like before. Like before, when they talk about the God-sized hole in AA, that's what it was. And any time that I had tried to, if I was hurting or wanted, an on-off switch, so to speak, um, doing anything, it just didn't do it. And I'm actually 1 week post Iboga, and I think it's such a bummer that like Ibogaine and Iboga are known in the West for their anti-addictive properties, because now sitting with the Beatty and the Beatty way, um, the new layers that are being revealed are just absolutely amazing. And one of I think my biggest aha is that lessons only need to be painful as long as we need them to be painful. Ibogaine and Iboga are so ultimately generous, and I thought that I was going to go into this experience to get a little bit of an ass whooping, and it was like, haha, no, 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 no. You get to learn lessons through joy at this point. And, going in to Ibogaine for addiction, like it's amazing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But to then go through Iboga for psychospiritual reasons now, it's like Ibogaine is somewhat of a surface scratcher. And can you imagine? I mean, Ibogaine, the Mount Everest of psychedelics. Um, and So it's just been a total joy. And to really feel, I've heard it said that when you do Ibogaine that you're healing, 7 generations behind you and in front of you. I don't know if that's true, but to really feel the lightness going both ways is absolutely amazing. And then, I think back to what I was like when I was in acute opiate addiction before, and like I think of pie and me, I think of her, and like I love her so 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 much. And you know, if I had to go through all of that again to get where I am now, like shit, I'd probably do it all over again, you know? I would do it all over again, and I'm so grateful. And as somebody who tried everything and, you know, was desperate for recovery, like a person's head was on fire who was looking for water, um, you know, and not being able to get it and then being bestowed this gift. It's like the seventh wonder of the world. It just does not get any better. And so grateful. So thank you guys.
Yeah, I think you said something really profound there, Pi, about it's not a one-stop shop, Ibogaine. It really isn't. I mean, I've taken Ibogaine 3 times. I've taken Iboga twice, and I haven't done it for about 4 or 5 years. And bloody hell, I'm ready to do it again at the moment. Um, and I'm looking to do it this summer sometime. Um, but the layers you get on top of it are incredible. Um, you know, we do talk about kind of Ibogaine can get somebody out of addiction and it can get them in on the road, but then it's how you walk through that threshold, and if there's a willingness to just deepen and deepen and deepen and deepen, and this is obviously the journey that Pi's going through at the moment. That's another profound privilege. I think there's a bit of a misnomer where, you know, Ibogaine is sold as a one fixed wonder. Asha was somebody who talked about this a lot, that she always felt that, you know, 2 or 3 Ibogaine provisions was really the way forward to really help somebody get out of addiction. But once you got out of addiction, you need to embrace life in a new and full way. And I think a willingness to go down the psychospiritual route, to continually develop yourself until your dying breath, whether that's actually taking more iboga or whether that's working the, I don't know, walking across some mountaintops or taking a holiday to a place you've never, but it's that willingness to carry on embracing the lessons. I think most people don't recognize that we are at school, and there are a lot of ways that we can deepen ourselves and deepen our knowledge. And Ibogaine and Iboga is a fantastic teacher. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it gives us permission to embrace other modalities in order to improve ourselves, which is very, very nice. Can I ask that there's Tara, are you online at all? Because I'd love to hear your story, but I'm not entirely sure if you're online.
I am here, but
Ah,
I'm just here to casually listen. I don't think I'm ready to share.
casually listen. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. So can I make a comment, Anders, about Palin's story and what she said about Iboga and Ibogaine being just scratching the surface? So uh, I've interviewed dozens of people who've gone through Ibogaine treatments for addiction, and some of them had really profound, visionary, back to the origin of the universe kind of experiences, and some of them had a addiction interruption. That was the purpose. So whether it's Ibogaine or Iboga, you can have a really profound experience that deepens. And I think it depends partly on you yourself. You know, you're the part of the equation, like what you've done before, where you are in your own evolutionary journey as a human being or a soul. You know, that it depends what happens. So I just wanted to mention that, because Palin, you said that was scratching the surface. And also, I also want to pay homage to the other very, very powerful plant medicines that are here on the planet, like ayahuasca and psilocybin. If you do a 5 MEO, I mean a 5 gram journey with psilocybin, you are going to experience God. There is no question. So, it's really um, Ibogaine does something that those other medicines don't do, but I really feel very much like I want to pay homage to all of those as well. Thank you.
I mean, I suppose Ibogaine and Iboga allowed me to enjoy swimming in the sea and playing frisbee and eating a good meal in a way that everything beforehand was performative. And now everything tends to be more mindful and more in the moment. And, I really feel like I'm available for the moments rather than defining myself through my past or what my future will be. It's hard work to try and stay in the moment the whole time, but certainly in my case, I would have never achieved any modicum of um, beingness or mindfulness or awareness had it not been for Ibogaine and Iboga. Um, you know, they they both open the doors for me, and I think if you're willing to continue doing the work, you will always be rewarded. Ibogaine works with one thing really well. It loves it when the client is curious. I mean, I think that's the most important ingredient to bring in to a relationship with when you're meeting Ibogaine or Iboga is to just be curious as to what it shows you, not try to deal with any particular intention, whether that be to save your marriage or to be a better person or to do this or to do that. Ibogaine doesn't like to be tested like that. It just wants to tell you what's 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 needed for you. And if you can go in with this incredible curiosity, and I always talk to the clients, I would say that, you go in as an anthropologist, a researcher, the kindly parent you never had, all wrapped and rolled into the compassionate but profoundly curious observer. Iboga, show me what I need to see. And if people can engender that kind of mindset before they're going in, they are opening themselves up to Ibogaine in the most extraordinary ways. With the vets, I call it something else. I say, the mission is you're going on a reconnaissance mission and you're gathering intelligence. Iboga, show me what I need to see. And I think that's what Pi's done really well in this latest round of Iboga, which she did with Patrick and Michelle, I believe, is that she's gone in there with profound curiosity, but no particular agenda apart from being curious. I could be wrong. I'm doing your talking for you, Pi. Sorry.
You're absolutely correct. And to say, hey, show me what you need to show me. If somebody was coming into Ibogaine the first time, it could be like, whoa, buckle up, buddy, you know? But courageous. And this time, show me what you need to show me. And I was shivering and no, it showed me what it needed to show me with love and grace. And you're absolutely correct.
Because you met it in the right way.
With good guidance. Yours and Patrick and Michelle's.
Just Patrick and Michelle's. I mean, I'd love to hear anybody else's story. I mean, we've got 17, 18 people on this panel at the moment, and I would imagine that a few of you have benefited from Ibogaine. Great.
So
Kyra.
I'm going to just make her spotlight her. I think you're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you. Try the volume on your computer. Maybe that's down. We can't hear you. You'll have to turn off the speaker on the computer or it'll reverb.
Okay. Is that working?
Perfect. Let me spotlight you.
Oh, hi, friends. So I had to get on my phone. Apparently, my computer speaker isn't working there. But anyhow, so yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I was never a drug addict, but that does not mean I was okay. I had a very rough childhood, and when I was 5, my father was diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer and given 3 months to live. But he lived for 5 years. And there was a lot of beautiful lessons in those 5 years, lessons of living in the present moment and really living in the now, because there was no tomorrow for him. But, when I was 10, he died. And I was left to my mother, who has a personality disorder and a lot of mental health issues. So there was an element of actual survival in my childhood, like learning to cook because she kept giving me food poisoning, and learning to really fend for myself in some real ways. Then, when I was 15, a man broke into our home and raped me. And so I am also a violent crime rape survivor. So I grew up. I did leave home immediately after I was able, when I was 18, and I was out in the world. And while I was that's my partner, Oakley, in the background there. um, uh, when I was able, I did get to college and did get a degree in ethnobotany. Then I became a nurse. I've done heart surgery and many things. In my 40s, and in current time, I'm 52. In my 40s, I really came to medicine in a more serious way. First with ayahuasca, things like that. But eventually I found my way to Iboga, and it would be hard for me to put into words all the ways that has helped and changed me, and just what a magnificent life I feel like I live now. I have some beautiful children and a lovely home. I grow an epic garden. But really, it I would resonate with that message of I would do it all over again to be here in the present now today. And of my most recent journey, the one message, this is such an Iboga message too. You know how like some things are so simple, and you're like, why couldn't I have thought of that on my own? Well, the simple message was really anything that isn't alignment isn't alignment. And that was my most recent. I mean, I'm sure that seems very basic, but you know, there you go. All right. Well, lovely to meet you all, and we can chat more later. Bye.
Oh, unmute.
Hi. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, it always amazes me, you know, that every single person I've ever met who's come through and to Ibogaine and Ibogaine and Iboga has seen and heard and acknowledged and respected the traumatized child within the part of us that screams and yells and shouts that it's been mistreated and not seen and not heard. And, you know, certainly I feel that, you know, within my journey, you know, where I ended up in the military to essentially escape an environment where I felt worthless and I didn't feel seen, heard, and acknowledged. And the military worked for a short while, and then this role, and then this mask, and this thing worked. And then, you know, I found drugs, and that kind of worked in, you know, for actually quite a long time, and it works in the moments as well occasionally. But it was always about, you know, lighting the fire of change, lighting the fire of eros, lighting the fire of transformation. Um, so I would say that, you know, even my addiction was the right fire but the wrong hearth. And I think that's what Iboga does, is provides an incredible hearth in which you can start to build the fire correctly. I mean, I always think of that Ram Dass thing where he's on the John Hopkins album when he talks about finding that little ember and rebuilding the fire. Um, and I agree. I agree with both of the previous speakers that I'd probably do it all over again. I wouldn't change anything to arrive to where I'm at now. And where I'm at now is far from perfect. I've got a lot more work to do, and I'm really looking forward to doing it.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hey, I would like to share my story. Can you guys hear me okay?
Who's that?
Hi, Karen.
Karen. Okay, let me just spotlight you. Give me a second.
Hey, so I first met the medicine in 2015. I was about 7 months pregnant with my daughter, who's now 10. And her father, my beloved, he was a heroin addict since the time he was 13 and had originally come to Mount Shasta, where we lived, in order to get well. And he was on and off spending time at the Buddhist temple for about 6 years, going between there and Chicago, where he's from, and just in a hopeless cycle of addiction, stemming from all sorts of childhood trauma and medical trauma that he was born with that caused him to grow up part-time in the hospital. Um, he uh, he was in his addiction, he was very volatile and dangerous, but otherwise he when he was in his right mind, he was a loving person. So so he was, you know, we stayed together. Um, the medicine was brought to us by a friend who basically he came and sat and talked with us for a couple hours, and mostly him doing the talking. And it's, you know, from what I know now, it seemed like the root was speaking through him. And he shared just one little piece with each of us. And, and just said, like, may this start your journey. Later that night, another friend came and brought my partner a jar of it, and he said, just start eating. So, my beginnings are imperfect, but so yeah, we didn't have a facilitator, we didn't have integration, we didn't really have a lot of support except the support of the medicine itself. And he didn't really know how to place it. And we didn't continue working with it. We ended up giving the rest of it back to the person who gave it to us. And then things just got kind of hopeless. I was introduced to combo as well, which I am now trained in, and I facilitate that locally. He In 2017, our daughter, when she was 15 months old, things were getting really, really bad. And I told him he needs to leave, and he was going to do that to protect us from himself. And another person, a third person, came and saw us at the park. We decided to have one last day together, and we went to the park, and a man approached us, and he said, like, brother, I see where you're at, like, would you like help? And so they talked for a long time, and a family agreed to come. They offered to come help our family. So we, as a family, including my daughter, ate small amounts, and he ate large amounts. So he essentially was flood dosing, and they were coming and spending a few hours with us every day, and then going back home, and then the next day they'd come and spend some more time. And so it was a family to family affair. And it was pretty dangerous because my partner had been using Suboxone, and it was all very close together. We had a traumatic experience where he was laying in the other room, and I was nursing the baby in the front room. And it was going on for days and days and hours that day already. And all of a sudden, I heard this horrible noise, and he was projectile vomiting onto the carpet in the other room. And I was totally freaked out, and I slid a garbage can underneath him and kind of ran away. Um, he said that when he was able to speak again, he said how terrifying it was because he wasn't able to move. When he started to purge, he was going to just be on his back, and because of the ataxia, he was basically like kind of paralyzed. I use that warning story a lot when I tell people how dangerous it could be, more than just a cardiac risk, but other things that can happen when a person's not in control of their body. Um, After this experience, he's very clear. He had come through this ordeal, and his eyes changed color. The way his eyes looked when he was in addiction were this like washed out, faded dry blue color. And after this medicine, his eyes turned turquoise. We both had such a clearing that we didn't even know what kind of music we liked anymore, because the words to lyrics just seemed too much of a projection to sit and listen to. And so we were listening to a lot of Blue Tea music, and as we listened to it, we could taste the medicine again. We had basically tapped into a sort of psychic space, and we're having full conversations with each other and laughing at the same times. Just with this complete connection and understanding. But after a few months, he relapsed, and it was like we couldn't get more medicine. The people that we were working with, understandably, were like, we want to help, but if we're not going to do this roller coaster. And so he I asked him to leave. On my 35th birthday, he was he did something very dangerous, and I was threatened. And somebody that was supporting me in the community told me if anything were to have happened to our daughter or were to happen to our daughter, I would ultimately still be responsible for keeping her in this situation. So I asked him to leave, and he did. And we were both reluctant, because we kind of both felt that this is something that we can fix, but not under the circumstances. We were so desperate. He he went back to Chicago and he died 2 months later on the streets. Um, and then the medicine came back into my life after that through the same family. Um, I worked with this medicine through my grief. It was the loudest empty space that you can imagine next to me, especially having gone to these realms together. So when I ate this medicine, I felt him with me. Um, I continued to do my work on myself and stabilize for myself and my daughter. And um, later I, met Combo again, and I did a year of self-service before I got my training. Uh, yeah, this medicine has just really the way that I've described it to some people is like wrapping your antenna in gold foil. It's helped me with my communications, especially in confrontational situations. It's helped me to know that what I put into an interaction determines what I'm going to get out of it. So it's made me more sharper strategically, more diplomatic, more compassionate, more able to see people as individuals, outside of my expectation of what anybody should provide for me or any feelings I should be provided. Um, it's helped me like with my foresight of consequences. Um, yeah, so yeah, that's my story.
Thank you, Karen. Let me bring Anders. There you are.
Hi.
Hi, I'm just gonna replace you. Okay, there you go.
Hi. I would like to introduce somebody, guy called Shane. Shane, I think Shane, if he tells his origin story, I think it's very, very, very salient to what's happening within the Ibogaine world at the moment. And as the subject is around purpose and meaning, I think I'd love to introduce Shane into here. And I'd also like to thank Karen very much for her really, really strong story there as well. It was a privilege to hear your origin story. Thank you for that. And I'd like to hand over to Shane now.
Hey, thanks, Anders. I appreciate that. And hey, Karen, thanks for sharing your story. I kind of came in at the tail end of it, but it was definitely impactful. Yeah, so kind of I'll start from the beginning. I appreciate first of all the time and the ability to be here talking with everybody and sharing my story. That's probably one of the most impactful things that I've had throughout this entire journey is, people seeing me, hearing me, and being there for me. So yeah, it all kind of started, at a young age, I suffered a lot of loss. I had a family, my parents weren't emotionally there for me. I used to tell myself I had a, decent life growing up. I had the things I needed. I had a house over my head. I had a roof, toys, things of that nature, friends. I lost my brother at the age of 14. I suffered a lot of loss throughout my life, losing a lot of family members. And then I joined the military right at 18 years old, because that was an escape for me. It was a good way for me to get away from the suffering that I was enduring daily. I thought I was escaping it. I was going to make a new name for myself. All I was doing was putting a mask on, trying to define myself because I was so lost in the world, being empty, being scared, being afraid of who I was or where I came from or what I experienced. I didn't realize it until a lot later in my life that that's what was going on. I absorbed into my military career. I served for 20 years. I had 3 combat deployments, 2 to Iraq, and then 1 to Afghanistan. And, I suffered loss during those deployments. And I thought that was probably the worst of it with, PTSD goes. And I was in denial for a long time that I even had PTSD. I just blamed it. I absorbed into drinking. I absorbed into disassociating and distracting myself in any way that I possibly could because it sucked to feel. I didn't want to sit in my feelings. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to show up for myself. I struggled with a lot of that. I turned to alcohol for a good few, probably like 5 or 6 years of my life. And then my father passed away the day before my second deployment, actually. And that was really difficult for me because I felt like he was one of the few people in my life that was there for me. But I learned through kind of reflecting back on stuff that it was just another lie that I told myself to kind of give myself a little bit of hope and give myself somebody else to rely on other than myself. And then after my third deployment, it kind of started I came to the realization of like my career is coming to an end. I suffered a back injury. I had a surgery. I had multiple TBIs as well. So, I went through the gambit of, having surgery and kind of recovering and drastic life changes. What I failed to mention is that, my wife of going on 10 years now, actually 11 this year. We have 7 kids, and she was really giving me hope. My kids, my wife, they're what keep me kind of going through it. Well, not kind of, they're what keep me going throughout this entire process. And it wasn't until recently, when I retired out of the military last year, that I started realizing how much I've been affecting my family, how much I'd affected my kids, how much I've hurt my wife, what I've put her through. And she kind of gave me an ultimatum of like, you need to do something to fix yourself. Up until that point, I had tried everything I could think of. I tried every modality: talk therapy, EMDR, ART, medication, SGB, stellate ganglia blocks. Tried all these different things, and all they were Band-Aid fix. They were just something to get me through a few weeks at a time, a month at a time, something to kind of patch over and make me feel better temporarily, but it never really addressed the actual issue of what I was, the actual, moral wounds that I suffered as a child, as a young adult, and then as an adult. And it wasn't until, I got out of the military and I didn't have these restrictions or the fear of, ruining my life, ruining my career, because I decided to try an alternative method of healing. And that's when I really turned to looking at psychedelics. And I had done some research to think what was the best for me, what would work for me. I came across Ibogaine. I'd heard about it a few times in the past on podcasts, things of that nature, but I never really thought it was a medicine for me. I kind of didn't even think psychedelics were as powerful as they are in healing. But then the more research I did on Iboga and Ibogaine, I really kind of understand the power that it has. And then the more I started talking with people, getting connected with different providers at clinics, and just hearing what it is that they offer and what to even expect from a personal experience, I realized how powerful of a medicine it actually is, and then what it does. It wasn't until I met with the medicine back in March that I truly believed it. and felt the impact myself. You know, working with Anders as my coach to kind of get me ready for it, the preparation, as well as working with Gareth down at Inner Realms, was probably the most impactful, meaningful things that have happened in my life, aside from my wife and my kids. Just the pure acceptance, the being seen, being heard, were probably the most important things for me throughout the entire journey. Having the space to actually have a container to be there for myself and really kind of put things in perspective leading up to meeting the medicine. You know, if I didn't have that type of preparation in that environment, I think it could have been a totally different experience for me, which is why I think it's so important to have a correct, you know, pathway to healing. And it doesn't just start with the medicine entering your body. It's preparing for it, understanding what you're getting yourself into, understanding where you're coming from. And then once you meet the medicine, it's game on. It's just another tool. It's going to show you what it is that you need to be shown. It's going to open the doorways. And it's going to show you everything that you already know. Like, it didn't show me anything I didn't know. I wasn't surprised that it showed me that I was suffering. I wasn't surprised that it showed me that I was isolating and scared and terrified. I knew all those things, but it was different because it allowed me to walk that journey with myself and really show up for myself in that moment. And that's what I needed in my life. I truly believe that, you know, people that experience Iboga and Ibogaine, like, it comes into their life when they need it. Because up until that moment, like, you just might not be ready for that journey or be ready for what it is it's going to show you. And then, you know, the integration after, the importance of the soft landing, you know, being somewhere where you're comfortable and you're able to process and you have that room to actually be able to kind of sort things out, and having that space and time is probably one of the most important things I've been able to experience. And, you know, if I didn't understand that going into the treatment, I think it could have been utter failure, you know, in the path to recovery. And it's one of those things, you know, everybody says it's not a magic bullet, and it's really not. But what it does do is it resets your nervous system. It resets everything. I used to jump at the sound of the slightest bang, or the, you know, being scared to drive under a bridge because the inherent fear that I was going to get blown up. And I remember when I was down in Teppa's land, after treatment, we went out for tacos one night, and they were shooting off fireworks. And I didn't even process it. Like, my brain just didn't even go there until I saw a couple of them. And I looked over at Blair, and I was like, hey, I just realized this is the first time I've had explosions going off on me, and I'm not even reacting to it. Like, there's no nervous response. It was profound. It was amazing. It was like hitting the restart button. And that was the first real notice of it. And ever since then, it's like, I feel like I'm a kid again. I enjoy going out, being with my kids, being with my family, being with all my animals, digging in the dirt, doing all the things that I used to dread doing, or I couldn't ever find joy doing. And, you know, I know Andrew said it earlier, I'm finally feel like I'm alive again. I have the ability and the compassion for myself, to show up, to understand things, to be there for myself. And in doing so, it allows me to be there for my family, my friends, my wife, and actually starting to build a community, which are things that I could only have dreamed of in the past. So it's, you know, Iboga and Ibogaine truly are such a powerful thing, magical almost, in a sense. But it really is impactful, and it really does have the ability to make change, and give people the opportunity to make those changes in their lives. So, yeah, I really appreciate everything that it's done for me, and I really appreciate everything that this community continues to do for me.
Thank you for that, Shane, and it's been a privilege being part of your journey. But the reality is that at the end of the day, what Shane did, which many people need help with, is that he chose to heal himself with the help of Ibogaine. He turned up. He put the work in. He put intentionality and integrity and respect and reverence and curiosity into the process of preparing for the Ibogaine. And maybe, there is a bit of smoke and mirrors about that, because if you're turning up for the Ibogaine, you're turning up for yourself. And many of us just don't have the skill set or the tool set to actually turn up for ourselves until we have something really important to aim for. And Ibogaine affords that opportunity. And I do know that the spirit of Ibogaine or Iboga, it will meet you with the intentionality that you meet it. So if you turn up and you've done the work and you're curious and you've been profoundly honest, Ibogaine loves honesty, loves transparency. If you're willing to get honest with yourself and you're willing to turn up, then Ibogaine and Iboga's gifts are incredibly bountiful. And I suppose that's the big one thing. This is what Awake is trying to do, is we're trying to provide an environment where people can actually take the medicine, but meet the medicine properly, land properly, integrate properly, and be supported on the way, because we are tribal. We need people around us, and maybe that's a fair reflection on the world today. I often talk about, the British village 50 years ago had a cricket club, it had two pubs, it had a corner shop. Everybody went to church on Sunday. The local policeman knew all the children's names. The vicar had christened everybody in the village. The midwife had brought everybody into the village, and neighbours shared coffee and sugar across the fence. And there was a cricket club, and there was fetes, and there were Christmas celebrations. And this doesn't happen anymore. British villages are places where people live, and they get into their car in the morning, they drive to the train station, and they go to work, and then they come back in the evening, and they walk through their door, and they turn on their microwave, and they have their meal in front of TV, Netflix, on repeat, on repeat, on repeat. And we need to be sitting around a fire, and we need to be telling stories, and we need to be seeing each other and hearing each other and breaking bread with each other, because that's what we are. We are humans, and we are living in a world where the very idea of what it is to be human is being eroded on a daily basis. And so maybe, Ibogaine and Iboga allows us to remember who we are.
Yeah, it definitely was a extremely powerful ancestral experience for me. It allowed me to heal that ancestral aspect of my bloodline, and I finally feel comfortable with myself to be the parent for myself, be the parent for my kids that they deserve. And I don't have any fear of not raising them properly and giving them the life that they truly deserve. So it's really a powerful thing.
Shane, thank you so much for turning up today, turning up for yourself,
absolutely.
turning up for the Ibogaine, turning up for your wife and children, and turning up to the threshold, because that's what Ibogaine is. It's a threshold medicine, and all the preparation and actually the provision of Ibogaine, wonderful and great, but what Ibogaine does is open the door to a new threshold, and it's how you walk through that threshold now. And that goes back to what we were talking about, where people are taking, Pi talks about taking Iboga again. she's just continuing through that threshold, and she's continuing to do the work, and she is not resting on her laurels. And I think that's the really important thing that Ibogaine asks us is it says, don't rest on your laurels and don't tread water. Keep moving forward, keep developing, keep embracing. This is the gift I'm giving you. Let me have a look if there's any more messages in the chat. I would love to see if anybody would be willing to come on board. Is anybody out there who's and we've had some great chats today, I've got to say.
Walter, would you like to share? Well, I don't know if he's there. Well, I can share if nobody else is sharing. Paul Featherstone, did you want to share?
Or Apollo?
Hello.
There's Apollo. Okay, good. Let me make him.
How's that?
Who's that?
It's Paul Featherstone.
Oh, it's Paul. Okay, one sec. Let me just.
Hi there.
Can you turn on your video, please? There you go.
I think it's on, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to thank everybody for all the courageous stories. It's so the honesty of strangers that suddenly no longer become strangers. Just following on from what people were saying about, I think all these problems that are arising in the world, pathology, whether it's physiological, psychological, the real essence of it is that Ibogaine is a catalyst that if you bring to bear some of the circumstances that Anders expounded on and other people have mentioned also, that the profound change that can come about defies all conventional Newtonian understanding as such. And just from the whole thing of gathering round fires, I'm going to say if you are in a region of the world where there are people that are still fortunate to have their cultures, it's not a construct based on a legacy of a corporate colonial model. Get to know these people, spend time with them, because lots of them have messages from ancestry saying that one day these people that came to these various lands, I've spent time around the world with some of these individuals, and just the essence of the message that they have, there's a good framework there. I understand that there's potentially interactions with First Nations in North America and potentially elsewhere, but these people get to know your neighbors. Like Anders was saying, that the 1970s world of the UK is so different. Now people live in compounded like properties with buzzers and gated communities. Get to know your neighbors, have conversations. Everybody's moving 1,000 miles an hour. Just try to slow down, take a breath, and remember why we're here, essentially. But by all means, maybe Netflix can take a pass one night, and maybe people can sit outside and stare at the fire and talk and just put down the bullshit, maybe, of all of that. And remember why we're here.
I mean, I've got Paul coming down and visiting me next week, and we're going to go off for a walk with some mycelium, I would imagine, and connect and play Yahtzee and maybe light a fire in the garden and hang out and listen to good music, because, that's what it's really about. It isn't about the next Lexus, and it isn't about the next pay grade, and it isn't about so many of the things that we fool ourselves. And I I was so miserable for so many years trying to chase these things and then getting even more miserable because I wasn't able to attain them. I mean, it was a double bind. And, you know, it really is a load of BS. You know, be available for yourself, be available for your family, be available for your friends, and you're going to have a pretty amazing life. And be available for your cat as well, as I can see with Paul there.
This is like,
I mean, I think maybe the Ibogaine asked us to keep it simple. And, you know, I always do talk about a remembrance of who we were before the world got its hands on us, but it's a remembrance of who we were as human beings before the world changed too quickly. Um, you know, I'm feeling quite pensive at the moment, and the words are not coming out, but I mean, this whole thing is based on purpose and meaning. I don't think there's a person in the room listening to this who's either taken Ibogaine or Iboga, and their sense of meaning and their sense of purpose has radically changed for the better. And it always ends up about just being decent and having community around you. And that's what I love about Awake, is this kind of cohesion of a whole load of people who understand the medicine. And what we're trying to do is support people who are going through this medicine. And you know, Paul said something very, very interesting last week, and I took that away. He said something on the lines, to paraphrase him, that we're trying to change consciousness through one treatment at a time. Um, And it's maybe not that we're trying to change consciousness, we're just trying to remember what our original core consciousness was all about, which is about connection and being available and being grateful and seeing the wonders of this world and seeing the wonders of creation. Um, you know, Ibogaine is, without any doubt, it is an incredibly spiritual journey to take. It connects you to the omnipotence of the world and the energy of the world. And you know, when you're in deep dark addiction, you have no sense of that. Um, Apollo, I'd love to hear from Apollo if he's willing to chat.
He might have had to step out. He told me he was very busy this week with patients and stuff.
Lakshmi, do you want to bring something to this today, please?
I could do that. Okay, I guess I have to add my own spotlight. Okay. Oh, now I'm looking at myself. I see what Asha meant. Okay, I won't look at myself. Well, so I know. Anders, this is the answer. I'm going to add you, then I can look at you. Okay, that's better. Um, well, so I'd been a psychonaut for many years before I came to Ibogaine, and Ibogaine actually came to me through Martin Polanco. I was working on his website. I and he invited me to do a psycho-spiritual journey at his place in Tijuana at the time. This was in 2015. And I said yes because I'm a psychonaut. So, I said yes. And I had I just wanted to experience the medicine, and I would probably never have sought it out because it was for addiction and it's so expensive, etc. So I'm eternally grateful to Martine for offering it. And what happened was my father died of diabetic neuropathy, and I had diabetes, and I did not know I had it until they did the blood panel for the Ibogaine. And so during this amazing journey that was showing me things about DNA and, genetic, talk about ancestry, like genetic heritage, the diabetes, and about how I could remove it with my mind. But meanwhile, on a body level, the Ibogaine was removing my addiction to sugar. I didn't know that that was happening. But I went back home and I literally stopped eating carbs and sugar with no resistance, and I lost 30 pounds, and my whole body realigned, my nervous system realigned. I felt like a different person. And that was the gift of Ibogaine at the time. During the journey, the last thing I said, literally that I said, and it was the end of the journey, and I said this out loud. I said it in my head, and I said, I'm going to make a movie about this. And then I went away and nothing happened. I went on with my life. And 3 years later, um, my partner Jack and I, we ate something that made us sick. We drank something that made it. We both got the flu, and I was sick in bed, and we were like completely prostrated by this flu. And in addition to the flu, I was also feeling very, very a sense of profound depression, that I had not achieved anything in my life, I was just really desolate. On a scale of 1 to 10, if you were to say how low I felt, I was like about hitting bottom. And I was so desolate that I didn't know how to pull myself out of it. And so I did an I Ching, which is what I like to do. And I said, I tried to make an intention, but I didn't have the heart or the strength to make an intention. So then I did an I Ching, and I said, well, how can I make an intention to feel better, or something like that? And the next second, after I asked that question, I got up on an impulse and I went to my dresser and I pulled out a screenplay that I had written years ago, and I started to read it. And I hadn't read it for a long time. And so as I'm reading it, it was like I was reading it like a reader, not as a writer. And by the time I came to the end of the screenplay, my energy, which was kind of as a one, had risen, and I was elated by the time I finished that screenplay. And so I realized then that, oh, I have something to share. I can maybe help people feel better. And so I decided I was going to make a movie. And so uh, uh, something that had happened to me just before I all of this happened, getting the flu, etc. I had a dream, and in the dream there was a tiger, and it was like big, strong tiger, and I was behind this tiger, and I felt there was this real power to the tiger, and I wasn't afraid of it. But that was the dream. And then after I had this flu experience and I read the screenplay, I did a journey with ecstasy and LSD, and I saw the same tiger in my vision when the yeah, exactly, the cat. There's a cat over here. I saw the same tiger, and I kind of wanted to hug it. And then I realized that I was a tiger, and the tiger was an expression of love. That was what it was, this fierce love, and that love was mine to have. And literally after I had that experience, I started to make this documentary, Iboga Saves. I went to see a filmmaker. I partnered up with him. I had all this energy that allowed me to do this. And I'm just a person, I'm just a person trying to make things happen. But I had awake.net, I had the domain for a long time, and I started this whole thing, the nonprofit, and attracted people to it, and I always feel like there's this energy behind it. It's not just me. It's not me. I'm just a person. There's this energy behind it. It wants to become something, and part of that is the message of Iboga and Ibogaine about life purpose and consciousness and finding meaning in the world and how you move through it. So um, it was totally amazing, and that energy is still with me, that got initiated by that by that dream, really. But I feel like it was Iboga and Ibogaine and doing that journey that did that for me. So that's my story.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi. Great story. Got a new nickname for you now.
What's that?
Tiger.
No, no, don't.
Um, I mean, look, we've got 15 or 16 people here, and we've had a really, really lovely evening. It's almost like it is reminiscent of sitting round the fire in the village and listening to people's stories. I would love if anyone else would volunteer to tell their story, because we are all ears. And I think in many ways, it's the sharing of these stories and the authenticity and the rawness about them. That's where the real magic is and the real healing is just in that kind of honest storytelling. So if there's anybody else, please interject. Please come in.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Kenny Tolia here in New Jersey, USA, and I'm happy to share. I wasn't going to share it first because I am a mere activist, and I'm not someone who has, taken the whole dose of Ibogaine, although I have myself microdosed. But let me see, what can I tell you? I am somebody. I have a unique kind of position because I have, I was around from the beginning. I knew Howard Lotsoff pretty well, and a number of the early people that he treated with Ibogaine. And I'm now the head of Ibogaine Works Inc., which is a New York State corporation that's doing harm reduction, public education, and advocacy right now. But we are seeking, um, to become a full client services organization. And right now we're getting ready to pretty much provide, a lot of people don't know, but there is a substantial black market now in the United States of people who are using Ibogaine, on their own. And so one of the things that we're doing is kind of providing the infrastructure and information to help people to use it successfully. At least by successfully, I mean in terms of whatever that it is that you want from it, really, ultimately, right? Um, so, right, like I said, we're working on getting what's called an Article 32 in New York, so that we'd be able to provide like actual counseling and peer counseling and this kind of stuff. And really, my expertise is in advocacy and activism. We recently had our first real event, our first public event, I should say, which was we did a reading of the names of people who have died from overdose at New York City Hall, and that was quite. It was very dignified and beautiful, and it was something to honor these people in that way. And I think that in many ways, I see this as kind of the unfinished work of the kind of the HIV. The HIV and the overdose crisis are like this. They're intertwined. And what I'm working on doing as an activist is applying the lessons of the HIV and AIDS crisis to the overdose crisis. So I often tell people that one of the reasons that I'm doing this work now is because I have 3 or 4 close friends who actually took Ibogaine and still overdosed and died. And so for me, what I see as being very important is the follow up and the aftercare and the understanding and the sense of community. Like we were talking, most of my education is in anthropology, and one thing I know about the Beatty ceremony is that it is essentially a coming of age initiation, and I think that in many ways that's what Iboga and Ibogaine provides for people by just by its tendency to kind of smooth over the surfaces of whatever people's kind of rough edges are. You know, if that's a good metaphor. So yeah, like I'm honored to be here, and like I said, I'm an activist who was very close to Howard Lotsow, and Ibogaine Works is here to help finish what he started and to end the overdose crisis. So that's about all I have to say about that. Thank you. I'm honored to be among you guys.
Thank you very much, Kenny. So important at the end of the day. We're when it comes down to it, we are trying to save people's lives and give them a sense of being seen and heard and acknowledged. And I think all of us in this room, we're all kind of working with one person at a time, and hopefully they will work with some people themselves. And it does have that beautiful grassroots feeling about it. But I am terrified about the future of Ibogaine insofar as the commodification of it and how that might be put through, and if it is legalized in the United States, what model of provision will they attach to it, and will it serve the people who are taking Ibogaine, or will it serve the people who are creating a market to make money out, to commodify people's pain for financial gain and dividends? Thank you for the work you do, Kenny. Really, really important stuff.
It's difficult, I have to say that the reading of the names really affected me deeply because it's just it was very intense. So like I said, I'm honored to do this work and to be here with you guys now. So thank you.
It strikes me how privileged I am to be alive at the age of 57, using all the way up until 45, because I lost a hell of a lot of friends along the way. When people are using, and it's the same with, let's not discount the veterans coming home as well. I mean, I think, what's the suicide rate in North America for people coming back from military service, where they're not held and they're not seen and there's no provision for them really? There's suicide rate of 85, 90 soldiers a day, or vets per day in
Yeah, I
North
think
America.
the statistic is like 22 a day. Yeah.
22, is it? Okay, I thought it was more than that. Maybe that's the worldwide one, but it's still a huge amount of people. And then how many people are dying, in the fentanyl and the co-fentanyl epidemic? And now kratom's coming on the market, and we've had 7-OH, and I believe, can somebody tell me what the new derivative of kratom is, which is
MGM15.
Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about this new crisis coming in, and how do we, as the Ibogaine industry, hold that? Yeah, thanks, Pi.
Yeah,
Thank you.
certainly. Yeah. So I mean, there's 7-OH, which is naturally occurring in kratom. So just naturally occurring kratom alkaloid, and I've heard anywhere from 30 or 30 times stronger than morphine. The binding affinity grabs on harder. But this MGM-15 is like a handful of times stronger than the 7-OH. And it, what's super scary about it is that, like, well, one, it's just the same thing with heroin. Like, the drug supply is tainted. People don't know what they're taking, even when they're taking 7-OH. But the MGM-15 not only binds to the same opioid receptors, it also acts as an antidepressant. So when people are on it for, a certain amount of time, when they go through withdrawal, it is not just, an opiate withdrawal. It's also an antidepressant withdrawal. And you can have protracted withdrawals that kick in, months after, and people don't know what they're even going through. And there's this website, it's really fascinating, it's called Test My Kratom, and they'll give qualitative and quantitative analyses of kratom products. And there are kratom products that have 7-OH laced in there that, it's not marketed as 7-OH, and there's 7-OH products that have MGM in there that are not marketed as well. And then there's actually another alkaloid, which is, semi-synthetic, so not naturally occurring, that is out there as well. I don't know what that one is called, but, so it's just such a bummer. I mean, we thought that once fentanyl hit the scene, it was a bummer because Ibogaine doesn't work on fentanyl and synthetic opiates. But now with, the drug supply, the tainted drug supply is just as tainted in over-the-counter products as well. And so, you could do Ibogaine and still have the protracted withdrawals. It's fucking tragic. So that's what it is.
I mean, we can safely say that the landscape of Ibogaine provision and Iboga provision has radically changed in the last 10 to 12 years. I don't believe I actually had a North American client who's actually come in for heroin addiction for 7 years, maybe 8 years now. It's a slightly different story in Europe. We can still get hold of it. But fentanyl and cofentanyl is a completely different beast, and of course, kratom and the kratom derivatives are a completely different beast, and it's making Ibogaine provision that bit harder. And as Pi was saying earlier on, when you're getting post-acute withdrawal syndrome from kratom and the SSRN or the antidepressant kind of attachment you get there, and there are some great people doing really, really good work around the antidepressant withdrawals with using things like continued use of Ibogaine and Iboga and Muscimol, which is a derivative from the fly agaric, seems to be very, very effective. But it kind of puts into focus that Ibogaine provision and Iboga provision is not as easy as it was 10 or 15 years ago. Is Asha still here? She might have something to say with that because she's working with one of the biggest clinics around and must be seeing a lot of that, but she might have left already.
She's left. She's left.
Paul, has anybody got anything to mention about sort of the landscape of Ibogaine provision and how it's changed in the last 10 to 15 years? No.
And may I share something? So I'd like to just share a couple of things since we have a little spot in there. So I think that one of the things that Anders and I and people who have joined us talk about is the fact that it's not a magic bullet, that Ibogaine is not a magic bullet. It's the beginning of a journey, and I think this idea of a journey, and that it has a certain rhythm to it, and it has certain um, pit stops. Sometimes they're really pit stops. You're you know, you're in an abyss or you're in a void, or sometimes you have these epiphanies of moments of huge feeling at one with everything. But it just goes on and on and on. It's a never-ending story, and that's really what we want people to understand as they come into Ibogaine, so that it's going to change you. It's going to change you fundamentally, and in a good way, completely. But you're going to have, you might go home feeling very elated and everything is in place, and then you're going to have to deal with your life, the actual life you had created up until that point, and all its imperfections. So anyway, I just wanted to share that that's really what we want to expose people to as they go through preparation, begin treatment, aftercare, integration. So just want to add that to the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, Ibogaine doesn't turn you into George Clooney of the Dalai Lama or the Second Coming. You're going to wake up from Ibogaine, and yes, in many ways you're fundamentally very different, but you still have to pay tax, and you still got that asshole next door neighbor, and you still have the boss who shouts and screams and abuses at you, and you still have the traffic to deal with and the lack of community. And part of this big journey is that there's a lot of shit out there. And that's the kind of the cosmic joke, is that the mature integration is about arriving to a place where you kind of accept the world for its insanity. And if you can look after yourself as best you can make sense of that. But yeah, it's a, life is a tough gig, and there's no way it would be remiss. And I mean, I do see this. I've seen it on Joe Rogan with Brian Hubbard, and he has kind of intimated that Ibogaine's this miracle drug, and it takes all your fears, and it makes your life better. It's a panacea. And I think we have to be really, really super careful of that language. The reality is, and I've seen this in my own work over the last 3 to 4 months, and I've been speaking to a lot of providers about that. The quality of inquiries we are getting as a result of that kind of narrative coming out is that we're getting an awful lot of people who are essentially looking for a quick fix. And this medicine isn't a quick fix. It's extraordinary. It can move you forward in really profound ways, but it's not going to fix you. You've got to fix yourself. That's how the medicine works. And it's an ongoing game till your dying breath, is to continue working on yourself and expanding and being curious. And what I've seen lately in the last 3 to 4 months is, people turning up and saying, "Well, give me Ibogaine. I need to be cured. I want to fix." And no, I don't want to do pre-treatment. And no, I'm not interested in integration. Just give me the medicine. And whose fault was that? Of course they're going to think like that. Of course they're going to go down that route. Of course they want the quick fix. We have to be very, very compassionate towards that. But the people who have responsibility within the industry of the provision of Ibogaine, we have to be really, really, really honest with our clients and say to them that maybe it's not what it is being sold on Joe Rogan. And please, if you can find it in you, try and turn up to this medicine in another way. I feel really kind of gutted about the idea of maybe somebody who's in abject poverty, doling out $6,000 to $7,000 for an Ibogaine treatment, where they're not held at the beginning of it and they're not held at the end of it, and they're very excited to do Ibogaine because they've been promised a magic bullet. Fuck, that's just such a misnomer. It's a grifter's way of selling this medicine. Let's start getting transparent and let's start getting honest.
May I say one extra thing? For those of you who are doing screening for people, doing pre-screening before Ibogaine treatment, there's a small lesser known issue that I've noticed here in the Northwest. I live in Washington State, between Seattle and Portland. I do festival and event nursing from time to time, and something has come up. And since I feel like there aren't a lot of people on this one, I want to put this one in your brains so that you can look for it or know about it. Now that the Mexican cartels versus the Colombian cartels are in charge of the cocaine supply, they are cutting it with something called levimisol, which is a cattle deworming agent. Levimisol is a worming agent used all over fish tanks, all kinds of weird things. But what I notice at the festivals and things like that, I've encountered this a few times now. At least in my neck of the woods, people aren't intentionally ingesting, say, fentanyl or something like that very often, but they are intentionally ingesting cocaine at festivals. And levimisol lowers the seizure threshold, and it also causes some interesting symptoms like you can sweat to death and die of what looks like heat exhaustion or sunstroke in perfectly normal temperatures. It messes with the autonomic system. And so cocaine is a little more dangerous right now than it was for a while. And I've sent a few people out in ambulances and things like that from this tainted cocaine, and it really doesn't show up. You can test the drugs, but it's very hard, very difficult to get not many tests are sensitive enough to find it. But I just thought I'd put that bug in y'all's ear so that, if you get somebody who's really specifically like a cocaine addict, you could have that in your mind to counsel them. That's all. Bye.
Wow, that is a fantastic piece of information, and I haven't come across it. And I'm at the coal face of this type of stuff the whole time. Would you be kind enough to write down what that is?
It's on the chat.
Absolutely. There's some really wonderful articles. It's spelled phonetically, levimisol. But yeah, I can send you some information about it. But I've now seen it on at least 3 separate occasions and had to call a few other people. And I suspect, though cannot prove, because they specifically didn't do the things that would test for it. Have you all heard of the case where the girl died and it was in Zendo care at a festival, and then her family sued MAPS and won about $1 million? And what came through her system, she tested out as only having acid in her system, but she died of what looks like, I've read her coroner's report, she died of what looks like heat stroke, and it would be consistent with levimisol in her system, and it could have been levimisol out of the window like earlier in the week, where you know, that. And it's something that's cumulative. So once you've had the terrible effect, if you survive it, the next time you will probably die. So I'll send you guys some stuff. I don't want to, you know, this is about Iboga, and I don't want to co-opt the conversation. So.
But it is about Iboga and Ibogaine.
It's relevant.
That's true.
This is the knowledge that needs to be shared. And the other thing is you know, Paul Featherstone's just said that you know, the same product is being cut into MDMA in Europe.
It's far more dangerous than people know, and because I do very specific festival and event nursing, you know, when you feel like you're seeing something that nobody else is seeing, you know, or there's like, you know, I guess I'm not sure enough people are connecting those dots, you know, to really make it a giant issue. But I can send you some information about it, and the coroner's report on that girl who died, I can point to like where I think the miss was.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for that. You know, that's you know, this is what makes this kind of work so interesting, is that, you know, and it really is, you know, the funny thing is it really is the underground who, you know, they're the ones at the coalface, and they're the ones who see what's going on, and they're the ones who start creating the protocols. And you know, long live the underground. That's what I say. Long live the people who are working at the coalface. Thank you very much.
Kyra, can I ask you to put a post about that up on Awake, because we want to gather information like that, even just a short post.
Sure. It's actually been in my plan here for a minute to write an article on it, so that it could be more widely discussed or talked about. You know, I think that it's a thing that people have sort of missed, because it is hard to find. Like you can't just test your cocaine and know that it's there. Like the tests aren't very sensitive. There aren't very many places that have a test sensitive enough to find it. But if you had a person come to you seeking Iboga and their specific issue was cocaine addiction, I would definitely be concerned about it. So.
Sounds good.
I mean, yeah, I mean, look, we obviously need to look at any potential contraindications between that and cocaine, and then adjust accordingly. But you said that it stays in the system. I mean, what's the half-life for this thing?
Anders, I have to close this event. It's 1:30. I'm so sorry, but I have to go somewhere. I think I can leave it open and leave. I think
we can also pick it up at another time. You know, these will happen again. So
yeah, every Thursday, same time.
I've got a bit of Billy Bob Thornton and Landsman. I have to go and see that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anders.
No, thank you so much. And yeah, look, I'd love to get in touch with you about this as well. I think it's really interesting, and at least Paul is aware of it as well. So thank you, everybody. Goodbye.